Take a look at your market news. Shares across Asia plunged on Thursday, with Hong Kong and Shanghai-listed technology firms battered after the arrest of a top executive at Chinese telecoms giant Huawei that has fueled fears about the recent China-US trade deal. As US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping's tariff ceasefire last weekend, which sparked a one-day rally, fades to a distant memory, investors are back in a selling mood as they fret over a range of issues, including the state of the world economy, oil prices and Brexit. In the black for a second day in a row, the Nikkei was almost 2% lower at 21,501 points, while the Hang Seng in Hong Kong tripped up over 2.5% to close at 26,087 points. The Shanghai Composite was 1.7% cheaper at 2,605 points. US markets were closed yesterday for the funeral of former President George Bush. For more on the markets, we cross to Arabile Gumede at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Good afternoon, Arabile. Not a good day in the markets.
Yeah, good afternoon, Nzinga. Certainly not a good day, of course. As you can tell behind me, a whole host of red, and it's really just a global phenomenon as well. It seems like a global sell-off that's really happening at present. What it is, we'll unpack in just a moment, but for now, let's take a clearer picture and take a look at those European and local markets. Independent analyst Chris Gilmour joins me now as we unpack that market picture, which is, of course, completely negative. Chris, thank you so much for the time. More than 2% lost now today, an absolute thwarting of the markets.
Yeah, bloodbath. And I was just doing a quick calculation. If we take the peak, the all-time high, which we had on January the 25th this year, to the current level, we're down about 18 and a bit percent, 18.5% or thereabouts. So it won't take long, or it won't take much, should I say, for us to get into bear market territory as defined by a 20% drop in the market. And we've been flirting with this for a while now. So if we go down to about 49,300 and something, that's going to be in bear market territory. And the worrying thing about that, Arabile, is that once market participants start seeing that, it all kind of plays on itself and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you can go quite a bit lower from there.
Yeah, and it's not as if it's one stock in particular. Yeah. It seems that global issues themselves have seemingly played themselves out in the way that they have right now, particularly because of Donald Trump, and then everybody just sort of suffers at the hands of it.
Yeah, no, you're right. And as we were saying earlier, you know, this morning, looking back at the weekend, there was a lot of euphoria with this perceived new suspension of trade wars. And yet that seems to have dissipated. You know, the Chinese are perhaps suggesting maybe they're not going to adhere to this too well. This, of course, is the big thing. You know, I remember going to a conference about 18 months ago, an investment conference, where one of the participants said, look, we can cope with gradually rising interest rates, we can cope with gradually rising inflation. But if you get those two plus trade wars, then we're in trouble. And I think the trade wars, that's been the catalyst that's put the cat amongst the pigeons. It's put a lot of fear into players. So if we go into 2019, and again, the likelihood is that we're going to start seeing the US economy particularly starting to cool down significantly by the third and the fourth quarter of next year. It's not a good mixture, not a good cocktail for the rest of the world. And the US market is the one that really drives other markets. Emerging market economies, they've taken a bit of a beating. China itself isn't looking so wonderful all of a sudden. And therefore, you know, being categorized as an emerging market, the outlook for the oil share is perhaps not that gratifying.
Yeah, but it's easy, as I've said before, and we've spoken about, it's easy to get into that negative lull, and you can tell why we get into it, right?
Yeah.
But it does also present a nice buying opportunity.
Yeah. Small cap analyst Keith McLaughlin a few weeks ago said we're probably going to look back at this exactly what you've said as being a wonderful buying opportunity. And there's the old expression about it's never darker than just before the dawn. It's always darker just before the dawn. And yes, it's so easy just to get embroiled in this overwhelming sense of negativity, you know, both from a global and a local perspective. So therefore, I think, yes, for people who are very brave, I think now is the time to start looking around at good companies, well managed, and buying for the longer term. Companies like Altron, for example. I mean, that looks to me like a wonderful operation.
Yeah, hopefully people get into understanding that a whole lot more and get into that market picture. Let's quickly talk about the rand. Now surpassing 14 rand and now sitting at 14 rand 4 cents. We had been at 13.50 just yesterday afternoon.
Yeah. Look, I think we're experiencing a kind of risk-off situation with respect to all emerging market currencies. And the rand, again, being categorized as such, and also being highly tradable, being caught up in this kind of whirlwind of negativity. And I suppose the Eskom situation isn't helping. I don't think that's the main reason. I think it's a general emerging markets malaise that's pushing this thing. But the growth situation is obviously going to be hampered if this carries on an awful lot longer.
Yeah. Let's talk about that Eskom story as well. We've just heard as well from one of our colleagues who is at the press briefing coming out at 2 p.m. with the Minister Pravin Gordhan, and said to perhaps share some thoughts there. It's a dire situation. We've spoken about it many times before, and it's one that is going to need hard grafting and a whole lot of decisions that are probably going to make a few people angry, nonetheless, none the least, before elections.
Yeah. And this is you're right. It's a very sensitive situation, as you say, just before the elections. The utility now finds itself in the situation where it's got close on R500 billion worth of debt. It can't trade itself out of the situation ever. That's gone. Those days are gone. Even if it gets the kind of hideously high tariff increases that is asked NERSA for, that's really not going to help. Yeah. It's been systematically hollowed out by previous managements. So I really feel for the likes of Java Mabuza and Pakamane Hadebi. I mean, they've got a terrible job, but they are adapting to it. And I think what they're trying to do is formulate a plan. Whether government's going to buy all of the ingredients within that plan is another matter.
Yeah. Interesting one as well. We saw electricity consumption and production come out as well, rising 0.8% when it comes to how much was generated. That figure's bound to go down as we head towards the end of the year in terms of figures, because that was just the October figure. It's a dire situation. Hopefully we get an update as to how things are faring on that front as well today.
Yep, hopefully. And hopefully Minister Gordhan will be able to pour some oil on troubled waters, because the silence from the top echelons of government during the past couple of weeks has been deafening. Yeah. We really need, I think, to hear some calming voice, and Pravin has always been very good in this regard. Yeah. So I think hopefully that will eventuate this afternoon.
2 p.m. is when we expect to get word from him, as Gloria Sefako said not so long ago as well. But that's where the buck stops. It is negative across the board, even passing 14 rand against the US dollar, although we are below that $60 a barrel mark for oil. But how things fare, we'll continue to check in, and of course until 5 p.m. when the markets do eventually close.